YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back, and today I'm going over my top 10 NFL free agents, going from 1 to 10 and giving you potential fits and potential contract value. And then after the top 10, I'll go over the next couple tiers of free agents. So we're talking about more than just 10 players. So excited about this. We have free agency and draft content rolling out right now and more to come. So join us on our channel. Help us get to 100K. Any link you're looking for pinned in the comments. Starting at number 1, going with Chris Jones, the defensive tackle of the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously extremely talented right now, and he's not showing any sign of declining, still playing at a very high level. He's going to play in a couple days in the Super Bowl. Not only is he an impact, not only is he very productive, but makes the players around him better too, because he's getting doubled and tripled like crazy. So in the landing spots, quite a few of them. Some guys in this video have a little bit more than others. We'll eventually narrow down those landing spots as we get closer to free agency for all these free agents, and then we'll make a prediction as well, which we're usually pretty good at. But those are the teams I can see right now for Chris Jones, and we'll see the same teams kind of pop up a little bit throughout this video because we're talking about the top 10 guys. And those teams are set financially. Some teams you just cannot afford the guys in the top 10 because they're super expensive. But does he go back to the Chiefs? It almost felt like this was going to be the last rodeo for him early in the year. Week 1, remember, he sat out and they made sure they gave him a 1-year deal. So pretty interesting. Interesting if he goes to the Raiders, stays in the division. I could see him with the Lions. That'd be something that can make the Lions that much scarier. So a few teams I could see. Then value, this was fun. I kind of made my thought on what his value per year should be, and I came up with $28 million, around there. You kind of look at the other defensive tackles that just got paid. He's obviously better than them, but some of those guys do have some more upside. Guys like Jeffrey Simmons, Quinnen Williams, they have more upside than Chris Jones because they're younger. But Jones is much more, much better player right now. Almost seems like Dexter Lawrence got underpaid what he got. He's a little bit closer in terms of talent level. So does that bring the $28 million down? But Aaron Donald gets over $30 million. He's kind of in the same range as him. Spotrac had $28.4 million, and CBS's valuation at $28.1. So this was fun because I came up with my evaluation, my number, and then I checked Spotrac's and CBS's who have them right now and plugged them in there. So we see we're all pretty much in this. I actually thought I was going to be higher than, because I'm a big Chris Jones guy, but there are some younger guys out there. The Chiefs just gave him 20 or so million for a reason, so they almost undervalued him for some reason. So where does that leave you with the number here for this year? So, but we're all in the ballpark there, so that was pretty cool. We're gonna do this for all top 10 players here. My number 2 free agent is Brian Burns. It's a battle between two stud pass rushers, the Carolina Panthers pass rusher Brian Burns and the Jacksonville Jaguars pass rusher Josh Allen. I'm gonna give a slight edge to Brian Burns, but it's 50-50. I'm not gonna knock a team for going for this guy over that guy at all. It's pretty much 2A and 2B for me. Most people have Josh Allen ahead of Brian Burns. Again, I think it's pretty close. If we're going to base off this past year, which is important, how they recently played, Josh Allen played better, especially the sack numbers. It's not all about the sack numbers, but looking at so far their careers and what they could become, you put it all together, I've been slightly more impressed with Brian Burns, slightly more. He's on the brink of getting like crazy amount of sacks. Like he has seasons where he just gets 9 sacks, barely in the double digits, which is good. But it felt like if you watched, like he was on the brink of getting so many more sacks. So I think he's underrated because people look at the stats, look at the sack numbers. Just all around good defender, very young, still has upside. Like he was kind of known as a raw prospect because he was a little thin coming out of Florida State, and he took off right away. Some people were like wondering, could he be that 4-3 defensive end that he was right away in Carolina? And he was. So he impressed right away. Still has a lot of upside. So I'm a big fan of a lot of these free agents, but especially Brian Burns here. Could go back to Carolina. I mean, that defense was pretty good. They're the worst team in football, but the defense was pretty good. They would like to get him back. I don't see why not. The Commanders, I think Dan Quinn would like him off the edge in his defense, and they moved on from Montez Sweat, and I know it's a different staff, Montez Sweat and Chase Young, because if they're going to spend money there, they want a young guy as well, but also they want even better, and I think Brian Burns has potential to be better or already is. So I think that would be a good fit. Rams have had interest in Burns in the past. Maybe fits other teams better, but then the Falcons, who need a pass rusher pretty bad, also got the Rams defense coordinator Raheem Morris, so that's interesting. Texans, would they rather have Grenard back to pair with Will Anderson? It's definitely possible, but it'd be a good fit to D'Amico Ryan's defense. And the Lions, I think, pairing him opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. So, again, some similar teams as Chris Jones. Teams looking for defensive linemen. It's a different position, but also, you're going to see some of the same teams pop up because they have the money. We're talking about the top 10 guys. They're expensive. So, yeah. Teams could clear. There's a whole process. Some teams will clear. Some teams won't clear that much. They'll kind of just stay put. They'll clear it even, and then they'll stay put. But we'll see. So who can come up with some new teams that can come up with some cap space. Value, I was a higher evaluation here on Brian Burns and then Spotrac and CBS. They both actually had exactly the same, so that was interesting. So if you take those two, put them together, it's like, all right, he's going to get right around that range, $21.7 million per year. I thought much more, $24.7 million, very young, very solid. What the Panthers were asking for him in trades and what teams were willing to give up. A lot, actually, but not enough at the same time. But again, young, so much upside. Got to factor that into free agency. It's not just about who's the best right now. You're looking at the recent pass rushers that got paid. Rashawn Gary, Montez Sweat, $24.5 million. So, and now it's a little bit later. Usually, it goes up a little bit, the market. So, I thought 24/7 around there made some sense to me. I thought it was they both had 21.7, but I thought that was a little low. It's a lot of money. I thought it was a little bit low, though. So I thought that was interesting. Typically, I'm lower than I've used Spotrac quite a bit in the past just to kind of compare. CBS, this was actually the first time I saw CBS had evaluations or estimates, but usually I'm lower than, most people. Like I would be a guy that doesn't want to, you got to get good players, but I build through the draft for the most part. You can't just only build through the draft. And I typically would like to not overspend or give these crazy contracts out, but I would value Brian Burns very, very much so here. Then Josh Allen I have at 3, so it's kind of like a 2A, 2B pass rusher situation in free agency. Josh Allen is going to fit more of the 3-4, so you see some changes in teams compared to Brian Burns. Some similar teams that don't really care too much about, if they can get after the quarterback, they're not going to care too much, but it seems like Seattle would have to clear a bit of space, but they're probably looking for a guy like this. And so you see some other similar teams that we've talked about. But I had the same value, Brian Burns and Josh Allen. I put them right around 24.7. And CBS had the same exact thing as they had on Brian Burns, 21.7. And Spotrac had more on Josh Allen, 23.9. But I look at the contracts just given out. I mean, Rashawn Gary, going into this year, early this year, and then Montez Sweat, they both got $24.5 million, and you got guys that you could argue are better, but they definitely, most people would say they have more upside, and they're hitting free agency now. They're not getting this contract months ago. I would think it would be more than that, but it's not all what it's all about. Sometimes we get the free agency and guys they're disappointed. They go for cheaper. It's kind of random sometimes, but pass rusher is extremely valuable, obviously. A guy that just got a ton of sacks this year, a very productive pass rusher. I was very high. I think everybody was on Kentucky. Still has that crazy upside. Number 4, going to go to quarterback. Kirk Cousins, he is coming off the Achilles injury. That is the tough part there. Landing spots, not a long list. Some people say, could he go back to Washington? They got the 2nd overall pick. So at first I was like, probably not. They're going to take a quarterback with that pick. But then I was like, yeah, they got Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn's an old school guy. He wants to win right now. So maybe they take something else with that pick. They pick up a guy like Kirk Cousins, but they brought in Cliff Kingsbury, and I don't really see Cousins and Kingsbury in the same system, so that kind of maybe remove them again. But the Vikings could go back to the Vikings on a 1 or 2 year deal. The Falcons make a ton of sense. They want to win right now. They feel like they're a quarterback away. Kirk Cousins is really the only one in free agency that would make a ton of sense for them to help them compete right now. The draft, I mean, they have somewhat of an early pick, but you probably have to trade up. Do they want to mess around with a rookie? They bring in a McVay tree guy on the offensive side as well, and Zach Robinson. So where O'Connell came from, he coached Kirk Cousins in the Vikings, obviously. So a lot of things that they have spending money, a lot of things that make sense. Steelers would have to clear a bit. I think they're more of a wild card. There was talk about Cousins going with Arthur Smith in Atlanta. Maybe a better version of like Tannehill, who he had when he was in Tennessee, but now he's with the Steelers as the offense coordinator. So I think they probably roll with Kenny Pickett. Raiders, could see it get better at the quarterback position, or do they look to trade up and draft one? In the Patriots, probably draft one at 3, but maybe because the struggle with the young quarterbacks they have, maybe they don't want to mess around and draft a rookie. I think most likely they do, but I really look at the Vikings and the Falcons with this one. And this was funny too, because I kind of predicted that I'd be lower amount of money than Spotrac and CBS, but I was slightly more, but we're all pretty much in the same ballpark. They had 39.3, 39.6. I went to 40, just because Daniel Jones' contract last year is 40. Derek Carr got a $37.5 million. We believe Kirk Cousins above those guys, so I think you got to start at 40. I will say, the Vikings should have some leverage if they were to get him back, though, because he didn't want to. They weren't going to deal him anyways, but at the deadline, when they were struggling, he didn't want to be dealt either because he didn't want to get up and move, and he felt like that was his spot. So I don't think he really wants to go anywhere else. He would like to be with the Vikings and O'Connell, and that receiver group, and the offensive line seems to be getting better. So they got to understand that he kind of wants to be there. He's not going to take some low ball offer or a discount really, but this is a situation where they can't really overpay. But I think 40, based on where the quarterback market is, what other quarterbacks got around that range, around that 39, whatever, I think he's going to get at least 40, to be honest. But he is coming off the injury, though. But I thought that made sense for Kirk Cousins there. It'd be interesting to see what the Vikings do if they don't bring him back. They just go for some rumors about Russ, but go for a rookie quarterback, try to trade up, or they do both. They get Cousins for a 1 or 2 year deal, and they try to trade up and get a quarterback, or stay put and get a quarterback and learn behind Kirk Cousins. So that's a pretty good quarterback, I guess, to sit behind. I think that's the only way that works if sitting a high draft pick is if he's behind not only a good quarterback, but a smart quarterback, like a Kirk Cousins. Number 5, going to go with T. Higgins. And a lot of landing spots here. A lot of teams that could use a receiver, specifically an outside receiver. The Bengals could definitely want him back. They could franchise tag him. Titans definitely need a receiver pretty bad. They also have Brian Callahan, who is familiar with T. Higgins being from the Bengals. The Bears would be a pretty good pairing with DJ Moore. In Chicago, get an outside receiver, more of the contested catch outside receiver to pair with DJ Moore. Patriots could use them. The Lions could be sneaky. You think the Lions' their biggest need isn't receiver, but they could use one to pair with St. Brown. Cardinals, Panthers. Panthers make a lot of sense. The Chiefs could be a little sneaky too. Get a guy to pair with Rashee Rice. Maybe they take receiver a little more seriously now because the struggles this year. They are in the Super Bowl. And the Giants would definitely love to have them. They maybe don't have the spending money that some other teams have, but they do have some. I thought this was interesting. It almost felt like a mistake in terms of the value. CBS had 16.5 and Spotrac at 18.6. I felt way too low. I know it is risky because I guess at times he doesn't get crazy separation, and maybe, it's a Jamar Chase show and maybe he disappears a little bit. And he had Joe Burrow, but he was still good with Browning, and he's still got upside. He's such a impact player. But I was surprised how low that was. I think the big thing here is the franchise tag is there's no set number yet, but it's projected to pay around $21 million or over $20 million or possibly over $21 million. So we'd be at the point where maybe Higgins would want to be franchise tagged if he senses that he's going to get the 18 or 16's low. I don't know. I doubt it's going to be around there. But if he could possibly make more under the franchise tag, it's all guaranteed too. So that was interesting. So I thought around 21 million actually made more sense, and seeing where some of these other receivers, got paid, and an outside physical receiver like DK Metcalf, got paid much more than 21 actually. So could he even be pushing that? So I was surprised. It almost felt like mistakes, but they both are pretty low on more so CBS on the projection there. for T. Higgins. But I guess factor in that it's a really good draft class. Like, would you rather draft one of these young studs that are going to be way cheaper? I can definitely understand that argument. It still doesn't really change the value on a star receiver like T. Higgins, but that's team's choice. I could definitely understand that route. Some teams I would be for that route, like just not paying big on the receiver because there's so many they could draft or they can get one early. If you're a team that's like in position where you use Rome Odunze for obviously Marvin Harrison Jr., but if you're in position, it's risky though because free agency's first. But if you feel like you're getting Rome Odunze in the draft, then it's really hard to predict the draft. But I would rather have him. I would rather have him for sure. But then if you get Higgins, you can get an offensive lineman. We're kind of talking about the Giants and the Titans here. It feels like. So fill a need, take care of another need, make your team even better. So it's a tough decisions there. Number 6, we already talked about a Minnesota Viking. Here's another one, Danielle Hunter, who had a monster season this year. I mean, he has quite a few monster seasons, obviously, with his production, his sack totals, but he led the league in tackles for loss as well. He now has experience in both schemes, so he's pretty scheme versatile. That's pretty solid as well. The Vikings finally have some spending money. It's been a little bit since they were kind of in a bit of a hole. They finally have spending money here, and they have a couple big free agents. But the Vikings, Lions, Commanders, some of the same teams we talked about, teams that could use a pass rusher helping them win right now. You can definitely see. Both Spotrac and CBS are at $20 million, just like the other pass rushers. I was a little higher. That 23.5, $24 million, around that range. I mean, he does have some durability concern, I suppose. He was healthy this year, but you're going to get a physical, productive pass rusher that helps in run support as well. So, technically, like right now, he's better than Burns, and that's the crazy thing too, because that's how good this edge group is here at the top. Because Hunter right now is probably slightly better than Burns and Josh Allen, but those guys are very young, got a lot more upside, and Hunter's definitely not old by any means. But so that's why we got some serious guys at the top here for free agency this offseason. Number 7, I'm going to go Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle for the Miami Dolphins, and some similar teams and some others that we've talked about with Chris Jones. So some big-time pass rushers from the outside and the inside here we're seeing. But, yeah, some good fits. Teams looking for defensive tackles, teams up there that could have some spending money as well. The Dolphins do not have spending money, but they would maybe like to get their guy back and then try to work their way to even and backload that contract to help them as well. Both CBS and Spotrac had a value of 20.2. I was slightly more, looking at what Jeffrey Simmons, Dexter Lawrence, Deron Payne, those guys got a little bit under that, for me. I think he's possibly better than Deron Payne, but Jeffrey Simmons and Dexter Lawrence, I think, are a little bit better than Christian Wilkins. So it's not everything it's about, when it comes to negotiations, but it plays a part, like where the current market's at, where those guys that around his talent level are getting paid. So just a little bit under that, but I was actually, I'm usually less than like Spotrac in my, it's not really projections, it's kind of my value. So I've been a little bit more on some of these, but Christian Wilkins, we'll see where he ends up. Again, the Dolphins would love to have him back, but a little tight financially. And another defensive tackle, Justin Matabuke, from the Ravens, who had a monster breakout season, was very productive in the backfield, getting sacks, getting pressure. So a lot of landing spots for him as well. Ravens definitely would like him back. Again, some of these guys can be and probably will be franchise tagged. We'll have predictions for that in the somewhat near future. We're usually pretty good with those predictions as well. But McDonald goes to Seattle. Could he grab, they could target Matabuke or Patrick Queen. They're going to have to clear some space. But evaluation around the same thing, 20.3 for both those sites. And then I had a 20.5. Really tricky with him because super productive, and he's very young, still has upside and could be a factor in the passing game for you. But it was one really good year. Was he good before that? Yes, but nowhere near as productive. So are you going to give him like a 4 or 5 year deal, a big, expensive 4-year deal, in taking away from that Ravens? Mike McDonald coached a ridiculous defense, a lot of sim pressure, to create for the rest of the team there. So, like if it's another team like paying him like $23 million, it's risky. I'm not saying it's bad, but it is very risky. There's some risk. There's risk with all of them, but there's some risk with this one. But was a star player out there this year, very impressive. Number 9, we're going to go Antoine Winfield Jr., safety from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Some teams I like. You could go back to the Bucs, the Jags. They're going to value that position a little bit more, bringing Ryan Nielsen in. Titans moved on from Kevin Byard. The Eagles have Kevin Byard. They're going to cut him. They got to value safety a little bit more. Colts have suspending money. They could use safety. The Packers are going to have to dig themselves out a little bit of a hole. I'm sure they'll do that, but they might have to do a bit of work to be able to afford Winfield Jr. here, but they could use a safety pretty badly. It'd be a scary team if they can add a guy like that. And I put the Vikings in here. I know they used 3 safeties last year, and technically all 3 are still under contract, but they could move on from Harrison Smith. And just thinking Winfield, not because his dad played there, but because Winfield's versatility at the safety position and his blitz ability, I think Brian Flores would be in love with that idea. So it's mainly a fit there. And they do have some spending money, but may need to get some guys back. That's an intriguing team for free agency this year. They haven't really been in the past, but I think it's an intriguing team. What do they do with Cousins? Are they able to get new guys at the same time and bring him back? Maybe they let Cousins go and they get guys like this, get Hunter back, and then we move up in the draft and take a quarterback. Very intriguing team. I think those teams with big spending money, the Commanders, Titans, Bears, Patriots, those teams all got to be pretty intriguing as well. Eagles have some spending money. Do they try to get back on track? I mean, all these teams are pretty interesting. Value, this one I was a little lower on. I'm a big Antoine Winfield Jr. guy. His dad is one of my favorite players of all time too. But where the safety position is at right now, I think it's valuable. Honestly, I think on the field it's more valuable than people think. But I think where teams are starting to pay right now, they're kind of disregarding some of the contracts at the top of the safety market. Jamal Adams, Derwin James, even though people value him very highly. I've heard that, I've heard that being said from people, in the NFL. Like, we're almost disregarding those contracts. Look at Jesse Bates. We thought last year was a big star, just like this free safety that's available, still young. Like, are teams gonna value him at the top, like that 19 million? 18, 19 million. He gets 16 million per year. I thought that was a hell of a deal. And he tore it up this year, and Winfield tore it up this year as well. So I think the top tier money is not what people think. I think the league is at, where they're at is paying around the 16 for a guy like this would be 16 million to 17, maybe 17 and a half is pushing it a little bit. But Spotrac and CBS both had right around exactly the same thing, 18.4, 18.5. His talent level and his versatility and the playmaking ability, the impact, definitely says he's worth that or around it. I'm just talking what's smart, where teams are paying right now, where the safety position is at. 16.7 is what I came up with. So that's an interesting one, because again, if somebody goes out and pays him the 18.5 million, I would actually say, and this is where it's interesting, because I would say overpay, but not because of his talent. I think because of his talent, so it's not the end of the world then, but I think his talent is around there. I just think what you could pay, where you could save money, like what safeties are getting right now. I think it makes more sense, 17 million, but it's a big time playmaker, was huge for the Buccaneers this year. So he very well could get around that range. And then number 10, I'm going to go with Michael Pittman, who had a really good year, especially the second half of the year. He was good to get at least 7 catches a game, it felt like, and physical contested catcher, but physical after the catch as well. Seemed like he was quicker, faster this year. Hasn't really had the best quarterbacks on the planet, I guess, recently either, and he's still going off. So I love that, and he's still very young. Was he 26? So I think a lot of teams could be after him as well. Some of the same teams we listed for T. Higgins. The Colts have spending money. They're usually a team that makes sure they get their guys back. They don't really spend on new guys. Will that change this year? I feel like they're going to get him. They got to try to get him back. I love the fit with the Panthers and Dave Canales' offense, and some other teams that I can see going for a receiver and could spend the money here. And the value is interesting because Spotrac and CBS, not only interesting because they both had 22.7, but they were both like 16 and 18 million range for T. Higgins. And they're way more for Michael Pittman. So that was interesting. I think around the same range, even if you think T. Higgins is better. Maybe Pittman's more of a safer option to pick up. But Yeah, right around that range, makes a lot of sense. Imagine him with a really good quarterback, and he still has some upside. Should be fun to see. Obviously, I think the Colts got to go for him. He could very well end up back there. And the guys that just missed, Mike Evans may be better than a guy like T. Higgins or Michael Pittman right now, but those guys are very, very young. I would think the Buccaneers try to get him back. Kyle Duggar, I'm a big fan of. He almost made my top 10. Fits those dime packages, which are used more and more in today's NFL. Versatile, really fun and instinctive around the box. The corners, Jalen Johnson, L'Jarius Sneed. Most people might put those guys in their top 10 or one or both or the other, whatever. And they're very good. These are the top corners in the NFL this year. L'Jarius Sneed's still going because how well he's played in his teammates as well. Very good players. My thing with corners, I'm a little iffy about spending crazy money on corners unless they're like for sure elite, no question, like Jalen Ramsey in his prime. Guys like that's just kind of how I am, because I think coaching's a little more than the coaches, a little more important. I think the coaching gets kind of the best out of corners, like calling coverages and putting them in the right position. It's kind of been proven. So I'm not a huge. I'm not, kind of like, it's not quite running backs, but there's like really good running backs. Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry. We'll talk about Josh Jacobs as well. I mean, in terms of their skill level, you think top 10, just like the corners, top 10. But like the impact of the position, the value, how much you pay them, that kind of brings them down a little bit. Corners is not quite where running backs are in terms of value, but that's kind of where I've always been at. I think a lot of it is coaching, like Spagnuolo, I think, and Chiefs got some good corners, but I think a lot of it is because that defense, that system. Jalen Johnson, got better under Eberflus, obviously, but still a very good corner. The Niners got the same corners. They played better with D'Amico Ryans because of coaching, and they're still going. The Bills made it far when they were thin at corners. Ravens, Marlon Humphrey was not the same. He's beat up all year. They kind of, they got Ronald Darby in there. So I don't. It's an important position because it's very difficult to play, but I think people could overrate the value of it sometimes. I think most of it is coaching, but there are some talented guys here that deserve to get paid good money. I'm just not the guy that's going to go dish out 15, 16, dare I say 17 million, 18, get a little crazy for these guys. Somebody may do it, and again, that player, what he did, maybe they are worth it. I kind of want both players to go back to their teams, to be honest. I don't think they I think Sneed, I really would like back on that Spagnuolo defense. I think he just really fits it. So I don't know if he'd be as good elsewhere. He'd still be good. And then you got Mike Nwenwu, offensive line for the Patriots. Versatile, plays guard, tackle. Good offensive linemen, especially versatile ones, are usually pretty high up on the list. Sometimes those Patriots guys, though, that in that scheme, they go elsewhere. They're not as good, but it's a good young one there. A couple running backs, Barkley and Henry. Some of the best in football right there. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if Henry's elsewhere. It's going to be kind of weird. Both of them, really, but especially Henry because he's been around for a bit. Then Calvin Ridley, big-time like home run hitting receiver down the field. Obviously can get some separation. Another big-time free agent. The next tier of guys, we got a longer list. So these are the guys that I would consider like a next in line. Patrick Queen, the Ravens linebacker, had a breakout year. Josh Jacobs. I like Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry a little bit over him. Xavier McKinney's been really good for the Giants. Versatile safety. DJ Reader, really solid nose tackle. Really solid. One of the game's best run stoppers. Absolute one of the best run stoppers in the game. Dealt with some injuries this year and one late in the year. Leonard Williams, could play D end or D tackle, 3 technique. Baker had a really good year. I think he goes back to the Bucs. We'll see. Tony Pollard, obviously, an electrifying running back. Frankie Lavu, one of the top linebackers of free agency, been great the last couple of years. Kind of a do-it-all type guy. A couple edge rushers. Bryce Huff of the Jets, who was really solid this year. Both these guys kind of broke out. I mean, they were both solid last year, but they took another step. And Jonathan Grenard from the Texans. Cameron Curl, another safety of the Commanders. Interesting one because he's always been like a split safety scheme. A lot of cover 4 Rivera ran with the Commanders, but when they were in man, it was 2 over the top, cover 2 here and there. It's 2 over the top. And now Dan Quinn comes in. It's a lot of single coverage there, so you're going to have a single high free. I'm sure Curl could play that, but does he fit somewhere else more? So that's going to be an interesting one. Robert Hunt, I liked a lot. Coming out of Louisiana, I was a big fan. I think it took him a little bit to get going, but I thought he got going recently. I still think he has a lot of upside. So he is one that I like here. And then Hollywood Brown, big play, another big play, speedy receiver, could catch the ball a little bit better, but probably going to get paid more than you think. And then one more tier I have for you guys, kind of some guys that are probably better than some guys we just talked about, but these guys are studs. Obviously, a short-term deal most likely. Maybe one of these guys, maybe two of them get more than, because short-term I consider like 1 or 2. 3's kind of in the middle. I don't really consider that short, but like 4 or 5 are the long-term deals. 3's, again, in the middle. I think these are 1 or 2 year deals. I think there's a shot that I got like Tyrone Smith just because someone's desperate for a tackle, gives him like a 3-year deal. But he has injury concern. He's not as good as he once was, but he still is very good. But I would like a 2-year deal more than the 3, obviously. But he'd be pretty hefty of one, pretty valuable of one there. Levante David keeps getting 1-year deals. Could be the same thing. Bobby Wagner, same thing, but still very good. Levante David's better right now. He hasn't really lost a step at all. Like, he looks really solid. So it feels like, just the feeling I've been getting the past couple years is like Bucks or retire. Maybe it doesn't feel like he's ready to retire, but then Micah Hyde, who's definitely he's a good leader as well, but still got some talent in there. He definitely needs a shelled defense. A lot of cover 2 is where he thrived in Buffalo. 2-man safety group there. Austin Eckler, he definitely took a step down this year. Some mistakes in his game this year, but he's still, veteran guy that's pretty talented and not one-dimensional. So I think a team would like to have him. I just don't think he's going to get nearly as much money as he probably thinks. Probably going to be a 2-year deal, perhaps. And then Fletcher Cox, you got to think he's still got some talent left in there. Eagles got some replacements, right? It's going to be weird to see him not in Philly, but so he could be back, but on another 1-year deal, but it's definitely possible. I think he would like that. Eagles probably would like that, but they have some replacements for him, so we'll see if he can go elsewhere. But those are guys that are kind of worthy of being talked about in this video because how talented they are. They're just not super high on the list because, again, the 1 or 2 year deal, could definitely help a contending team. Like, I'm going to grade, because I always do the free agency grades. I'm going to grade. I decided this year, that's another thing. I kind of gave out A+ in the past for 1-year deals just because of how cheap they were and like they went to a contender. I kind of decided maybe no more. I think the highest I'll give in 1-year deal is an A. I thought that made more sense. But if a contender gets one of these guys on a pretty friendly deal and it's 1 or 2 years, that's a really good deal. It just depends on which team and how long. But these are talented players. But the better free agents are going to be the guys that that should and you want to give a 3, 4, 5-year deal to, and they can help you now and in the future. That's the difference between free agency and like ranking players during the year or on their past and things like that. So it's fun, and every player fits different teams. Teams have different priorities and who they would like, so you got those battles for players too. It's a lot. Free agency is so much fun. It's becoming more and more fun because the surprises, and you factor in the surprise cuts and trades and all that in there as well. And I can't wait. We have you covered for all of it. A lot of predictions, a lot of previews like this and predictions still to come for everything NFL in the offseason. It's a wonderful time, and we got the Super Bowl coming up. I'm more excited about the offseason, though. That game should be pretty good, though. So follow us on Twitter for instant updates, breaking news, predictions, thoughts. We got you covered on there, as well as this channel. If you're looking for our sponsors, GLD Liquid IV, links pinned in the comments for that as well. It's going to do it, though. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.